Well, hello, welcome. I'm glad that you're here with us again today. Today, we're actually going to look at readings from 2 Samuel chapter 5 and from 1 Chronicles chapter 11 and 12. If you recall, some time ago, I mentioned that we were going to be interspersing readings from 2 Samuel, from 1st and 2nd Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Kings, because they all cover the same general time frame, or at least, yeah, they all cover portions of the same general time frame. So, just as we briefly focused on Saul's reign a couple of days ago, today we're going to begin to take a look at David's reign. The brief reading from 2 Samuel details the meeting that took place in Hebron when the leaders of the rest of Israel made a compact with David to be their king. Remember, David had been king over Judah for, I believe, 6.5 or 7.5 years already before the rest of Israel comes into the fold. The other tribes acknowledged that it was David who had led them over and over again against the Philistines, even during Saul's reign, and that God had selected David to be their king. Israel knew this. David had already reigned over Judah for 7.5 years. Now he would reign over the whole of Israel for another 33 years. One of the things that David does as king over all of Israel, one of the things that he does almost immediately after he becomes king over all of Israel, is to conquer Jerusalem and to drive out the Jebusites or to destroy the Jebusites that control it. That city had not yet been accomplished or had not yet been captured by Israel, even though it was in the middle of the promised land. It was a formidably fortified city. So David does this, and he makes it the royal city from which he will rule. This demonstrates that his rule is for all of Israel rather than just for Judah. Hebron was in the center, was in Judah, but Jerusalem is actually in the territory of the Benjamites, and it's centrally located for all of the peoples. We're told that David then, after having done this, became continually stronger because God was with him. We'll shift our attention then to 1 Chronicles. We'll read chapters 11 and 12 in 1 Chronicles. As you begin reading chapter 11 in 1 Chronicles, you're going to notice that what you're reading sounds really familiar because he tells you again, and in a very familiar way, what we just read in 2 Samuel. The chronicler then goes on to speak of the great men that God had raised up under David. These men were mighty in battle, and they supported David's kingship before he was even king. Many of them were with him. Then when he was king of Judah, and then again when he's king over all of Israel. We learn also some things about the character of King David with a brief account of something that occurred while he was still being pursued by Saul. Apparently, David had lamented at one point how he longed to drink water from his hometown in Bethlehem. And 3 men, at great risk to themselves, as they were all wanted men, actually left their safe areas in the wilderness and went to the town of Bethlehem, got water for him, and brought it back. David, on realizing what they had done and recognizing how it is that God had protected not only them, but all of them, David and all of them, during their time in the wilderness, took the water and poured it out on the ground as an offering to the Lord for his protection and for the protection that God had given to all of his people, rather than drinking it himself. There are other stories and anecdotes littered throughout these lists of names and deeds that the chronicler so methodically provides. As you come across them, maybe pause in your scanning of the names to read those and see what you learn from them, what they teach you. The chronicler goes on in chapter 12 to list the men who had gathered around David while he was fleeing from Saul. So this goes back to the times before he was even king of Judah. These men became the nucleus through which David would rule first Judah and then Israel when he becomes king. The chronicler then goes through a list of men who came to David at Hebron, determined to make David king over all of Israel. After David had ruled there for some time, 7.5 years, if you recall, Abner basically made a decision that it was time for all of it. Well, I should be careful how I go about saying that. Let's just simply say that all of Israel was united. Notice when this happens that every tribe is represented, including the Levites, who are not normally included in military lists. This uniting of Israel under King David was not done grudgingly, as you can tell by this list, but willingly and with enthusiasm, for the Lord had moved all of Israel to do what he willed. And the troops came out armed and ready for battle, ready to fight for the kingdom that they supported. The people are united. There's much work to do. There were enemies to deal with, and the people were ready to focus on that rather than on each other as they had for the previous 7 years. Notice also the great celebration and feast that takes place. When you read that, maybe think of this as a foreshadowing of the great feast to come, when all of God's people gather before their King Jesus Christ on the last day. We too will be a part of that great feast. Well, may God be with you and bless you. As always, I pray that your readings that you're finding new things, that you're learning new things, that your faith is growing and being strengthened. I look forward to gathering with you when we get together again.